Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining. Let's start.
Thank you very much. So hello and welcome to today's webinar, 360-degree view of customers with legacy systems. My name is Martin Bacall, the product evangelist OpenLegacy, and I'm joined by Zev Avidan, our chief product officer, and Jorge Millet, a software architect. He'll be giving a demo a little later. But first, some housekeeping. In the bottom right corner of the slide screen are two diagonal arrows. Please click on them to enlarge the screen. And please feel free to enter questions at any time during the webinar. And now on to the presentation. First, Zev's going to discuss drivers for 360 degrees view of the customers.
So thanks, Marty. So there are many reasons why you would want to go about and build an API strategy and build APIs. And three of those reasons, or if you bunch them into three main categories, they will be around speed, being able to move at velocity, being able to create connections and experiences for your customers and do it in a way that's interchangeable and reusable. So that's number one reason for using APIs. The second reason would be around reach, meaning getting to new markets, new customers through new channels of engagement. So that includes, cooperating with startups if you are an enterprise, or cooperating with partners that can get you to audiences that you're not necessarily targeting currently. The third reason, which is relevant to what we're talking about today, is domains. As domains is basically, it's last but it's not least, and sometimes it's regarded as the most important of the three. And domains is basically the ability to break silos inside the organization and gather information from multiple systems, multiple backends, multiple lines of business, and gather them in a way that makes sense and make it customer-centric. So basically, if you're a bank and you have customers and they have loans and mortgages and accounts and wealth management, you don't want them to be separate. You want to converge all of the data in order to support that customer. And really, that's what brings us to today's subject. So from all of the APIs that people build, usually the first one or the most common one, the most common use case that people talk about is the 360 view of a customer. And 360 view of a customer basically means getting to know everything you need to know about a customer in a single API or service.
Thank you very much, Zebs. But the next question is, so what does a 360-degree view actually give you? Well, the biggest thing, which Zev just mentioned, is the ability to understand your customer better, anticipate customer needs. You want the ability to cross-sell them to other features, which was mentioned earlier in the domains, and upsell them but only when it makes sense. You have to know and understand the customer really well in order to do that. And also support. When they come in and they ask you a question, you want to have the whole context of that customer, how they're using it, the importance of it, everything else. But there are some other factors we really want to think about. Part of that is regulatory standards. A lot of different places have been adding the right to be forgotten. Of course, GDPR made a lot of, and the EU made a lot of this a few years ago, but more recently, California adopted some standards around that. Oregon's looking to adopt some standards around that. And what does that really mean? It means not just the right to be forgotten specifically in one database that maybe is linked to something. But let's say you've made acquisitions, you have other databases hidden down inside of an on-prem system. You still have to have that ability to really forget them if they have to be forgotten across your whole company, and be able to delete everything or modify a record and update all of it. So you have an accurate view of the customer rather than just saying each database has a different view of the same customer with different addresses and sounds really disjointed. There are a lot of things going into this that are major problems because the same person may be in multiple databases across a whole bunch of places. And this really cuts across all industries. Zev already mentioned financial, but we're going to see an example today of an automotive sales floor and another example for insurance. Every industry runs into the same problem and has some of the same challenges. And by the way, the digital players have really already done this for a while, and they've used this as an asset. When you think about it, the Facebooks, the Google, those types of companies get a complete view of that customer, and they pitch things to them all the time. They figure out ways to do it. This is about, but it obviously is a little harder sometimes for enterprises that have multiple databases through acquisitions and and some stuff in the cloud and some stuff maybe on a mainframe. Those are the types of things you're trying to address here. How do you get that full view to be able to compete against companies that actually are doing this kind of automatically, and it's part of what they do? So we're going to touch a little further on that by discussing the challenges that this faces.
Thanks, Marty.
Zev?
So with regard to the challenges, one key challenge is that, as we said, these are siloed applications that have been developed separately during the years, and they're all different aspects of the customer information. And those different applications can be legacy, they can be non-legacy, they can be new and digital and on the cloud, they can be on a mainframe or an S400 or an SAP or buried in vSAN files. And really, as Marty said, there's no such thing as the right to be forgotten, from everywhere except from a vSAN file. It's the right to be forgotten, period. And so when you're dealing with those 360 view of APIs of a customer, no matter what the reason, whether it's for regulatory reasons, either that regulation or the anti-money laundering regulations, or just for your specific, benefits because you're trying to create a new experience, an engaging experience for your customers, or to enable your, your reps or your sales people to better service your customers. For all of those reasons, you really need to be very thorough and understand everything there is to know about the customer, and that means accessing those different type of legacy systems. But of course, those legacy systems were not necessarily designed to be to work together. They weren't really designed to be to play well with others. So that's a key challenge. Just the getting to the data in those different places. But also once you get to the data, also there's the challenge of the data is normalized in different way. There are different formats for the data. It might be presented with different data types for a specific field. A customer ID might be 12 characters on one system and maybe 10 digits on another. So that's a challenge just in terms of normalizing the data, but also correlating. A big challenge, at least in the States, is different states have different ways of keeping people, and when they move from state, the same people, but the data on them is kind of broken up into different records. So really correlating, normalizing, and reaching the data, these are challenges around 360 view of API of a customer. And this is probably why it's the most common one. It's a very simple and basic need, but it's a quite complex requirement. So to break this down in terms of how this could actually be achieved, I'll move it back to Marty.
Thank you very much, Zev. And to discuss that a little further, we're going to discuss some data domain modeling. One thing I'll note, though, is we're discussing what an SDK is a little bit here to as a software development kit that allows you to combine things together. We dove a bit deeper into this on some of our other webinars that are all recorded as part of our whole channel. So you can take a look at the series and see how we did this for a mainframe, how we did this for Kix, IMS, some other things like that. But in general, what we're talking about here is you have to understand the value of an SDK versus primitive APIs. We really want the ability to have one SDK with some of the data elements that are actually abstracted away from the mainframe, that are part of the actual digital system, and then connected to maybe another one that could be a mainframe with an AS400. It could be also a digital asset. And then you can combine those together if needed to actually build your API contract and do orchestration among them, make them work together. This isn't just about the stuff coming from legacy. It's also about stuff coming from digital assets. And how do you combine that all together and not have just an API sitting off of a core system that can't really be combined with anything else because it's already an API sitting there? So you need the ability to do things like intra-service orchestration, and then you build it into a more complete microservice, which looks a lot more like this, and you connect everything in, so you have each SDK as part of the microservice in separate pieces, and then you actually have an API contract that everything accesses that microservice through. So it's a nice way to keep everything self-contained, and then you can actually use modern technologies of microservice architectures, things like choreography, to actually then communicate between the different microservices as needed and work everything together. So there's a lot of importance there in thinking about the whole process and what goes into it, and to be truly digital assets. Not only your contract, but also the SDKs and the things that you're using, and treating legacy like you treat any digital asset, in the same way. So those are all important things to think about as you go forward. So now I'm going to hand it off to Zev, and he's going to discuss a customer on this topic.
Thanks, Marty. So this is from an actual customer, Delek Motors. They are a car distributor and importer, one of the largest in the country. And their challenge was around trying to move from, and this might sound familiar, but they build their systems around parts. So cars have parts, and you order a part. The part is part of a bill of goods, part of an inventory. So everything in terms of their AS400 I-Series based system was around car parts. But of course, they are a distributor and importer of luxury motor vehicles, and they wanted to give their customer a better experience. And of course, a better experience involves being not parts-centric, but rather customer-centric. So if a customer walks into the agency or talk with a representative, you need to know everything there is to know about that customer, what they ordered, what they wanted, the different things that they kind of contemplated, what was kind of the quotes that they got, all of the information about the customer. And their system was not built to support that. So really their requirement for a 360 view of a customer was really around improving customer satisfaction and improving the quality of service. And the way they kind of represented it is that every time they have a touch point with a customer and they don't bring to bear everything they know about that customer, that's a lost opportunity, because that's a lost opportunity to have a conversation about something else they might also need, about maybe giving them a better service. So that was the big challenge around that. And basically what they were able to do, again, using the OpenLegacy platform, was move to a Microsoft CRM implementation. That was a bigger project, but specifically moving that part or that component, which was on the I-Series, still runs on the I-Series, but just by the method that Margie just described in terms of the SDKs and the APIs, allowing that Microsoft CRM have APIs that provide full view of the customer in terms of all of their needs. So now their representatives don't have to provide this kind of broken experience. They can, give the customer whatever they need, tell them all the things that are relevant to them, and really have a faster process, increase conversion rate, and give better service. And the entire system was developed in days. So this was using the OpenLegacy automated process and platform. That was a very painless way of doing so. And this is, an example of trying to get to 360 view of a customer in order to be more customer centric. There's, also other reasons why you might want to do that. One interesting one would be from another customer of ours, which is a credit card company. And what they've done is basically they turned their call center from a cost center to a profit center by providing their call center people with all the details relevant to a customer, so that when a customer calls, they can actually, upsell, provide them different products, see, what they can do for them holistically. And so that turned out to be a great channel for them for, an additional revenue stream, which instead of just, sinking money into a call center, which only deal with problems and not trying to see the customer in a more holistic way. So these are two examples of why a 360 view of a customer is important, and why it's important to provide data from across the organization, not just the easy to reach places. And for another example from an insurance company, I'll move it over to Marty. Marty?
Thank you very much. So this is an Israeli-based insurance company named Ayalon. And really their challenges were monolithic applications that again are part of AS400, which is interesting since most of our other webinars have covered mainframes, but this happens to be more AS400s, and it's on-premise system. But they really needed to access their customer data faster, and they wanted to coordinate with some partners and actually work with them and bring the database together so they can understand it. And their strategy, which is a little more deeper dive, was around DevOps. They said if we have DevOps, then we can get some projects done quicker and we can do it. But the problem is the industry really, in insurance, they looked around, it hasn't really fully gone after DevOps. And it really lacks the automation needed to get things done quickly so they can actually then figure out the customer needs and build everything they want. So this actually dives into a little bit of the development process to make sure it all works together. And we can talk about, what DevOps is, doing everything in a cycle and making everything work. But the idea was, they said, this is part of our success criteria to make sure customers, and we can actually work with the customers closer and be better with them. And they really had to educate their teams and to understand the whole process to make everything work well so they can get that view. So they had to deal with a large bank where they wanted to sell to the business customers of the bank, and they wanted to get the data from the business, understand the business customers of the bank to make the right pitches, to work everything together. And they needed integration of their customer data set, the bank, with what Ayalon had together and make it all work together. Well, they got this done 2 months before they signed any agreement by using OpenLegacy and using some other stuff. We have a very good webinar where we dive into more of the deep details of this that we did on DevOps.com that's available off of our website. And that dives into much more. Is actually the person from Ayalon talking about the whole process they did to make it all work. But the end result was IT was no longer the bad bottleneck, and they had a 360-degree view of their customers and could understand the customers in the bank and could coordinate all that data together, which is a huge thing to think about. But now, enough of us talking. We're going to hand it over to Jorge Millet, a software architect, who's going to give us a demo of all this stuff we're talking about. Jorge? I think Jorge somehow got dropped off. There he looks like he's back.
Hello, Mike.
Yep, you're here.
Sorry, I lost my audio for a second. Can you see my screen now?
Yep, we see it fine.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you very much. What I'm going to do is show you basically a demo on how this works from the inside, because we've seen a couple of examples, use cases that Mari and Seb, they just presented. And what I'm going to do is show you another example. In this case, from the financial industries, it's a very typical implementation that the banks, they have the credit cards managed by a third party, and they have usually the balances in another source. That actually makes it a little complex for the banks to show the actual statements and the correct balance to the end users. That's a very typical scenario, and basically the problem is based on how dynamic is the data. The data is moving faster than the possibilities that the bank has to acquire that information. So what I'm going to show you is how we can build very fastly and easily an API that is going to be having as an input just one single data, which is a customer ID. Then it's going to go and get from that customer ID information from inside of the bank. The information which is less time sensitive is going to be in the bank's databases. So they're going to bring, this is going to bring us the credit cards and the credit card types and limits that this particular user has. And then we're going to do some orchestration to go to other data source. In this case, I'm going to use a MySQL database to extract data from a table that is going to input the credit card, and it's going to bring us back the name and the balance. So we're going to be showing just one single record, full record to the end user. Let me show you first what do we have on the back end. This is the mainframe where we have this data set, which is the program that we're using. FiningCube2 is a program that we're using. It has a COM area, which is a very simple COM area with a customer ID, and then it has credit card numbers and types and limits and usage and things like that. Basically, we're moving data, and we're making this very simple for the every user to understand. We're moving just data inside of the code. It could be moving data from your core solution system, core banking solution, or it could be moving data from whatever database you want, even DB2, or we can connect straight into DB2 other ways as well. I also have some data that I put inside of MySQL very small table where I'm showing basically the credit card, first name, last name, email, and the balance. And you can see that these credit cards are going to correspond to some of the credit cards that we have here. So that's the way we match in the backends. This is the way this should work. What we do is I've shown in the past already in some of these webcast series how to create an SDK. So you just running the wizard, it'll take up like about 5 minutes. That's the usual. And you can pick and choose what's going to be your backend. So somebody was asking, do you deal with VSAMs? Yes, we do deal with VSAMs. We actually use the same connector that we use for the kicks. So VSAM or databases or pre-existing services that you may already have, specific core banking solutions like Temenos or others, we can do that connection here. And in less than 5 minutes, you can stand up a full SDK. I did that for you just to save some time, but I created 2 SDKs to make the connections to my environments. One of the SDKs is going to actually use the MySQL, this one, and the other one is going to use the mainframe program that I just showed you. So how do we know that? Well, for the connection to MySQL, what the SDK did is it created this particular code that I have here. So if I open the project, you will see that inside of the project I have these entities, and this is the entity credit card, the one that I'm showing you here. It has general information. It has the fields inside, so you can see these fields have been identified by the OpenLegacy SDK, and it's the exact same structure that we have on the MySQL table. Same thing for the ThinQ2, which is inside of the other project, the SDK named mainframe SDK, and it has here the credit card information, and you can see that we have identified what's the structure inside of the copybook that we got from the mainframe. So with these 2 sources of data, the SDKs are going to, taking care of doing the transportation, the modeling, the mapping, the communication, and also control the security in order for the end user to have a transparent reaction or response from the API without even noticing that he's going to more than one source of data. After I have the 2 SDKs, what I need to do is to create an orchestration API, which is here. Also, to create an API, it's also running just a simple, very simple wizard. The wizard is going to ask you for some information. But maybe the most important thing to show you here is the backends. What you can do during the generation of the API is to put more than one backend as input. In this case, the SDKs that I mentioned. One is going to go to the credit card repository. The other backend is going to go to the mainframe RPC session. And that's the way we're going to bring the information. So these editors are actually created by OpenLegacy for the users to basically understand very easily how the API is structured. So you can see that in the interface, we have the customer ID as input, and in the controller, we're exposing this as a Swagger notation. But the most important thing here is that we build the orchestration this way. You can see that in the service implementation, we are binding both sources, the ThinQ and the credit card information from the respective sources, the mainframe and the SQL. And not only binding that, but we're also creating the code. In this case, it's a very simplistic code that is just doing a for and an if, and that is doing the linkage between the credit card number that we're bringing from the mainframe. So I already launched this API, and it's running locally on my port 8080. Deployment methods, we have several. So your runtime, whatever you want to use, you can create a file from, you can create a microservice, you can create, services mesh ready or API gateway ready APIs from the OpenLegacy, because we can template the way you want to produce your APIs. Okay, so going back to my diagram, I show you the SDK, I show you the SDK in the mainframe, the SDK in the credit card side, the SQL, and also I show you the code for the orchestration. Now, launching the API, you will see that it's coming up into my, sorry, I'm trying to put this one. It's coming up into my port 8080, and what I'm going to do is go. By default, we have the OAuth 2 security on all our APIs. That can be changed, or just if you want to use another token, you can also change the type of tokens that you're using. Then I just post and execute my API. You can see that if I use a different number of the API and I execute this is bringing me information from more other types of credit cards. So depending on the data that I'm using as input, I am going to the mainframe, and the mainframe is getting me back some credit card information, and that is actually bringing the balance for me to be able to see. How do I know that? In the kick session that I have here, you can see that I'm counting the number of executions that I'm getting into my Thinning Q2 program. So every time I run the code, this number is going to be changing. So let me do it again for you. If I execute here, you will see that my count just moved one. And not only that, but also I'm hitting the SQL, and let me show you how is that I'm doing that. Because if I change this number, let's say 47,000, and I apply the change on the database and finish this process, when I rerun the execution of my API, it's going to be bringing you real-time data. So that's very sensitive, time-sensitive data, and that's the way how we make an integration of data from several sources to a user, completely transparent for the end user. Okay, so with that, I'm back to you, Marty and Seth.
Thank you very much for that demo. And now we're on to questions. We have a number of questions that already came in, but feel free to post more if you think of any. So the first one we'll ask is, can OpenLegacy access data in my reporting systems like vSAM, DB2, and MongoDB? I know Jorge covered a little bit of that, and we have other examples in our other webinars, but I'll pass it over to Zev to answer that in general.
So yeah, the short answer is yes, absolutely we do. We can deal with vSAM files, we can deal with DB2, IMS, KISS transactions, many AdaBest Natural, many different types of data sources on the mainframe or other legacy systems like DB400, 4S400, or iSeries, SAP, or applications. And even if it's a very proprietary system, chances are we will have a way of getting to it. So the answer is yes, definitely. That's what OpenLegacy is for.
Yeah, and we just had recently had a vSAM webinar you can view for that one, which is one of the more difficult ones to access. So it's good to see the steps and the type of support we have there. The next question: do you have any partners or applications that integrate with OpenLegacy to give this 360-degree customer view?
So yeah, so OpenLegacy is an integration technology. So we provide the kind of the last mile of integration into those hard-to-reach legacy systems. But definitely we have an ecosystem of partners. Some of them are dealing specifically with those types of challenges. Just to name a few, a Big ID, which is dealing a lot with the California regulation and these types of data identity management challenges. Del Bloomy, which is of course a great integration software by itself, and iPass that can provide many of those services. Calibra, which is a data management company and platform, and others. So we do have a kind of an interesting ecosystem of partners that we help provide them with the last mile of integration. You can go on our website and see in the specific what are the technology interoperabilities that we have, but definitely chances are that if you have a challenge around that, either we or us together with one of our partners can solve it.
Yeah, I guess I also probably would add Gigaspaces, which we just did a webinar a few weeks ago where you chatted with their vice president of product, is a little bit different, but it's the same idea that we can get a lot of data there and actually put it into their in-memory computing as well. What's the difference in data ETLs, data synchronization, and moving data around, and 360-degree view integrations between various backends?
So that's a great question, because one of the things that sometimes data lakes are used for, and ETL as a way of getting data into a data lake. So sometimes data lakes are used for getting that, same result of a 360 view of a customer. The only problem is that in data lakes, the data that you're getting is not necessarily always normalized. It's not always optimized, and it's not always fresh. So for some use cases, absolutely, that's the way you want to go. And you want to go with an ETL, moving everything to a data lake and, massaging the data there. And if it's not that important that it's fresh or it doesn't need to be actionable, then, that's the way to go. But in others, definitely you want to go through an API route where you get fresh data, you get it directly from the system of records, and that's important. And of course, there's always the combination between the two. Maybe, some of the data is more urgent. Some of the data, it can be, a day old or 2 days old. It really is a matter of use case. But overall, I think the biggest difference would be in terms of just the amount of data that you need to move around. With an API, it's a smaller amount. With ETL, that's big chunks of data. And with how fresh that data is, with ETL, it's not necessarily the freshest data. Maybe that's important, maybe not. And with APIs, that's, pure, coming from the system of record.
Thank you very much. And one other question, are other proprietary backends supported for making the connection between the ones you listed and the ones demoed for a mainframe?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, many different types, as I mentioned, SAP R3 and Tandem Tuxedo, and Oracle store procedures and tables, SOAP services, you name it. There's a plethora of different connectors to different systems. And again, as I mentioned, also there's a connector framework. So even if you have a proprietary system, something that you don't imagine anybody could ever, understand or deal with, there's a good chance that we can do that. Usually it's not a big effort to repurpose a connector to very proprietary systems. And once you do that, basically you get all the advantages of the platform together with it.
Okay, and there's a question that I guess I'll answer, but how do you automate the orchestration, which is a great question that just came in, but really, we covered that in the API Factory webinar like about a month ago that you should go and take a look at. That one really covered how to use templates to actually build and do that, and we have the ability to do templating. But any more comments on that, and then we'll finish this up.
Yeah, no, I mean the orchestration part. I mean that's templated. That's very easily done with orchestrating between the SDK. So it's code level. It's a simple approach, simpler than what you probably used to, and it's a very powerful approach. So we can use programmatic patterns in order to deal with very complex orchestration patterns, and that can save you a lot of time and effort and complexity.
Okay, and thank you to everyone for attending the webinar. Please feel free to watch any of the recorded sessions in the series. Also, please check our website at OpenLegacy.com. We appreciate everyone coming and look forward to seeing you again soon on one of these webinars or in touch with us. Thank you to everyone.